Let's strike with our Hanbo as if it were a sword.
This is the Kitsune clan, a group of sword enthusiasts who like cosplay, reenactment, and historical martial arts. If you have similar interests, feel welcomed.
In one of our last videos, we have looked at different striking techniques with the Hanbo, and we had looked at the one-handed strikes. And I already told you that I prefer to do that with my dominant hand, and that's because I had this one here already in mind. After having blocked in half sword type position, I have let go with my left hand, swing the stick around with my right hand, and now I can simply grasp the other end of the Hanbo with my left hand, and look, it looks as if I would hold a sword. That shouldn't be too complicated, or yes and no. It basically comes down to the same problem as I have discussed it a bit with the flip strike. If I do a one-handed strike, I give a lot of inertia into the target. And if I try to grasp it with the second hand, I might lose some of the inertia. On the other hand, I have a lot of force and much more control again. And control would be the point here. With the flip strikes, where my hand is in the middle of the stick, I don't need so much control because the weight is evenly distributed. If my dominant hand is almost at the end of the Hanbo, like here, my left hand will get a lot of additional control if I place it there. So it's definitely possible to do that. I suggest, similar to the exercise that I suggested last time, you do the same again. An opponent is attacking, you block, you sweep, or you soft block this attack, you go into a motion, you let go with your left hand, you grasp again with your left hand on the other side, and you strike as if this would be a sword. But important, don't think of sword in the way that a lot of people do their test cutting. Also allow strikes as if you would be in thumb hold, so strikes with the side, with the inside, with the outside, or with the backside. This is still a stick. It doesn't have edge alignment. It only follows inertia, and sometimes the inertia is much stronger if I'm crossing or uncrossing my hands and strike with the sides. I will link some videos on the sword mechanics behind that so that you can get some ideas what I'm talking about if you're not coming from the sword side. Is it now interesting to use the Hanbo like a sword? Yes, in some situations it might be. Usually I don't stay long in this configuration because that's not optimal. For that I would really love to have a handguard, and that's what the Hanbo does not have. The Hanbo is very strong in changing the grip according to situation. And for a long range strike, this is a good position for some time. As it has no hand protection, I don't want to be in bind like that. If I want to be in bind like that, I want to be in a slide strike position or similar. Therefore, this is a temporary thing, but it's part of the spectrum and it should not be ignored. We will see in some of the future videos that we cannot do so much with this grip. If we want to continue into more complex techniques, we usually have to let go again. For example, the one-handed grip offers us quite some possibilities with disarms and stuff like that, but this one here is problematic because we don't have a lot of possibilities to hook on the opponent or similar, so the force transmission in this way is much more problematic than, for example, in a slide strike hold. We will see that in quite some details in future videos. We can also recognize this in medieval sword fighting. If we look at European sword fighting, if we go into infights, usually the depiction goes into the direction of a half sword positioning, which is then a very classical Hanbo position, or it uses the free handle, which is then more similar to a one-handed position. Most of the more complex techniques concerning grappling, disarming, or whatever don't work with the classical sword hold. But of course, we all should know for striking, this is a very optimal hold. If you think of a baseball bat or things like that, that's exactly how you hold it, but it's not a way how you would hook on something or whatever. Are there many traditional techniques with the Hanbo in sword strikes? I have learned traditional Hanbo-JiTsu, and there were some of these, and they were usually transitions between two other techniques, so they seem to occur in that way, and I think it makes sense. And now we have derived it here from a specific situation, so it makes absolutely sense to have that and to train that. But I think if we are interested in understanding the Hanbo in general, this is only just a minor aspect. If you come from sword fighting and you're used to this specific position, that might be a different story, because then this can offer you an entrance. Again, the problem might be, of course, the lack of hand protection. Historically, there have, of course, been sticks that have been used like that, but then, for example, also combined with different stuff. Like if we look in the history of Venice, there were times when the inhabitants would fight against each other with sticks, and they would combine it with a buckler, which is an interesting historical aspect compared to other areas in Europe. So there is stick fighting like that. If we look at stick fighting with longer sticks like Indian Gatka or Jogo do Pau from Portugal and stuff like that, there it looks different, but there the distance is also different. That of course brings us a bit back to some of the fleshy discussions in sword fighting about the reverse grip, because for the Hanbo, the reverse grip is the normal grip. And that has been pointed out in so many cases that for quite some weapons, reverse is forward and forward is reverse. And for the Hanbo, it's a bit like that, but not fully, because you see, it works. The forward grip is not reverse for it, although it's the unusual one. And already when we looked at the flip strikes, we had something like the sword grip. It would be more like the nagamaki grip, probably, if we look at the position of the hand, but that goes in the same direction. And that offers us, of course, another comparative transition here. We could, after a slip strike, slide down with the right hand and also end up in the position we have here. So that could be also an interesting exercise if we simply do slide strike followed by slip strike followed by sword strike. The Hanbo is a very flexible weapon, as I pointed out, and it also lives from this change and change and change, and we have quite some possibilities here. That also means we can, for example, change back from the sword grip into the flip strike grip and flip back into the slide strike grip and then slide back into the normal grip. You can see already, you can produce long sequences here for different types of strikes, and there is no limit to it. I can only outline them here. As pointed out, if I would go through all of these possible strikes as I did for the basic mechanics, this would fill many videos, and I might do so in the future when I'm older. But for now, I urgently want to come to the more complex techniques, and there, as I pointed already out, the sword types of strikes are a bit of a dead end, because from here I basically first have to change my grip into one of the other ones before I can go into disarms, arm locks, and other complex grappling techniques. So far for today. Hope we could inspire you. Hope to see you around next time.